Carroll Shelby, Leesburg, Texas, January 11th, 1923. I met him at Baron Hilton's ranch, I believe, and I got to talking to him, and he says, "Come on down." He had property around Long Beach Airport, and he says, "Come on down and have lunch." So my office was about 15 minutes from there, so I went down and had lunch with him, and I remember he says he ordered his Crystal Yum Yum, and he had a couple of those, and I remember I had a drink with him. I don't usually drink at lunchtime. I get sleepy. So I said, "Well, I'm going back to my office and take a nap." I said, "What are you going to do?" He says, "I got to go to Argentina and go duck hunting." And I'm told that he and his wife got in their jet and took off that afternoon, went to Mexico City, and went on down and went duck hunting. He went back to school east, and his father was the founder of O'Melveny and Myers, the famous law firm here in town. And he went back and got his degree, and he had a little Fairchild 24, I believe, and he flew it home. And he went in and says they needed an entertainment section at the law firm. And his father didn't disagree, I think. I don't remember the story exactly, but anyway, he worked there about a year and walked into his father's office one day and said, "Dad, I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to fly airplanes." And I think 4 or 5 years later, he was chief test pilot for Northrop and Lockheed during the war, so I'm told. Oh, he loved aviation, and to hear him and Chuck Yeager and Bob Hoover, all of them tell the stories before all of the sophistication as far as the test pilot's concerned. They wrote the book. I'm very lucky to have lived to get to know those people and get to hear the stories from their mouth, because very few people have been able to do that. They used to call him the pilot's pilot. And what I loved about John, I never heard him toot his horn about anything. It's always the wonderful stories told by other people about John. He told me a story one time. He and Lindbergh were the only civilians that ever flew in combat during World War II, and they were both in the South Pacific, and I think Lindbergh figured out some way that the P-38s couldn't fly long distances. Lindbergh figured that out, so they could escort the fighters and bombers. And John was the chief test pilot on the P-61 night fighter, and he went down there, and there was a fella that had 35 victories. The more victories than anybody down there, and he and John went up and went at it. This guy and whatever he was flying, a P-47, I think, or something. And John shot him down just time after time while they were playing around. So he earned the pilot's pilot. One time I was in the Air Force in Randolph Field, Texas, in July something of 1941, and I drove the crash truck. I was just 18 years old, so I got in the fire department. I became a fireman, so naturally I wanted to drive the fire truck. I started driving the fire truck so I wouldn't have to wash those hoses off after a fire. And I was sitting on the flight line one afternoon, and it came over our radio and says, "Go to runway 36 and follow experimental aircraft to the terminal." And I went down there, and here came a flying wing, the first flying wing, and I followed that thing down the runway, and it pulled up, and this tall, skinny guy got out of it, and I thought, boy, that's what I'd like to do someday. And it was John Myers that I didn't meet till 40 years later. It was John Myers taking the first one to Washington, D.C. for John Northrop. And he used to tell me about the excitement that went on that flight across country in the first flying wing. His birthday was coming up, and somebody asked his wife, says, wonder what John wants for his birthday. He says, he doesn't know it, but I bought him a helicopter. And I think he flew that till way after he was 90 years old. So the guys on the ranch used to tell me that he'd go out and herd cattle with it. Everybody that knew John knew that his word was his bond. There's a lot of people that knew John better than I did, but we got to spend a lot of weekends with him. One Christmas I remember we said, John, if you don't have any place to go for Christmas, come to our house. And we got to have Christmas dinner, Cleo, John, and I. Gus, he loved Gus. Gus went everywhere with him. Gus went on his airplane with him. Gus was inseparable from it, for John. He took him with him everywhere when he flew it for you, on his jet. When you would talk to him, you knew that John Myers was a special person, but he never went out and tried to show the world that he's a special person. He lived his life as he saw it, as he wanted to live it, and he was very lucky in that. So maybe the world will never know John Myers for the great guy that he was. And I'm glad you guys are doing this in his memory, because I can't think of anybody that contributed more, bragged less, and accomplished more in the aviation industry. He did have a success in business, but you never knew it until you know, oh, you had to write a $2 million check for this, and he would say it in a way that you'd know he wasn't bragging. And he donated so much money to the university up there in, Merced, I think, where he had this 18,000-acre ranch, and I guess he got it when it wasn't worth much, and now it's worth many, many fortunes. I don't know if I ever heard that or not, but that sounds like him. Just go do it. See what happens. You got to go off into the unknown before you get any satisfaction. When you get there, maybe you run into a disaster, maybe you run into success, but it's not what you accomplished. It was a journey, and when you look back on your failures, a lot of times they were more fun than your successes. He went to his office every day in his Corvette when he was 95 years old. He wanted a Bentley, and we got him a Bentley, and he started driving that. And I noticed not long before he passed away, he's back driving his Corvette again. He'd be going down Sunset Boulevard 80 miles an hour. That's the kind of guy he was, and he went to his office in Long Beach, I think, nearly every day. Oh, he loved that fast boat. He loved everything fast. John was a unique guy. Never be another one like him. I know that he loved his country because we used to talk about it all the time. That's one of the reasons I'm so glad you're doing this on John, because without this, John might be forgotten, and this will carry John on for the next 100 years. Oh, every pilot knew who John Myers was. There's not a single person that was really interested in aviation that didn't know of John Myers.